to help you win.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Andrew, you're joining us from the UK today. For people who don't know you, you want to give a quick introduction as to your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an entrepreneur from the UK. I started a business from my bedroom at the age of 27 in the property services sector, grew it to about 50 million pounds turnover, and created an exit of around 100 million US dollars to private equity in that time. Retired at about the age of 37, and now do podcasts and business advice and try and help other people do the same.
Awesome. And so, for people who don't know, facilities management, can you describe the kind of services you provided and who your customers would be? What
Yeah.
kind of other parties?
Yeah, so facilities management is essentially property services in nice, big, shiny buildings, mainly in London. So think of a big corporate that would have a nice, shiny office and have 1,000 people in it. We would deliver all their services from the reception team as you go in to the compliance, the engineering, the insurance, the rental, the rates, everything that it took to run that space for people. And we specifically targeted big tech businesses. So you had clients like Facebook, who we were delivering services for, and Netflix and Twitter and Deliveroo, who we have in the UK, like DoorDash. These big organizations that are looking to create amazing workspaces for their environments that they have there and actually have money to spend on improving the areas, because it was really a talent attraction tool to try and get great people to work in those big office spaces. And we were their smaller provider that was a niche provider for them to deliver exactly what they needed to create the environments for their staff. And that's really what facilities management is.
So a company who's running whatever business, they need an office space to gather together. They don't want to have to then go out and find a security guard company to come and watch the front door. They don't want to then have to hire their own landscaper to come mow the lawn. So they turn to a company like yours because you can offer a complete package, and then they can just have one point of contact and pay one bill and just take care of all the stuff related to making the building function, essentially, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, essentially that's exactly it. But also in the UK, we have a lot of statutory laws that you have to make sure you abide by in relation to engineering and statutory compliance. But also it was more than that. It was things like utility management, energy reduction, decarbonisation of buildings. It was about how could we get the most out of that asset that they had. Now, sometimes clients would own the buildings that they were in. Sometimes they would just rent them from landlords and only work within a floor. So it really depending on which customer you were working with. But yeah, it was all about trying to create the most effective, productive, brilliant workplace that we could for the organizations. And that's what we did very well.
So now you said you started this business from your bedroom. So who was your first customer? Like what kind of business were they?
Yes. I don't know if anyone's heard of the global jewelry brand called Bulgari. So a globally very, very profitable and successful brand. They happen to build a 5/6 star hotel in Knightsbridge in London. And the very first call I made was to the chief engineer, Jeff, of that hotel after I set up. And I said, hey, Jeff, I've started this business. Would love to come and talk to you about delivering services, because everything was very high end. It was very important. Everything worked. A night in the suite there was £15,000 per night. So you can
Wow.
imagine the sort of clients that they had there. So I knew it was a quality one to begin with. So I called Jeff and he said, oh, sorry, I'm just doing my kitchen up. I'll be back in a month. And my heart sank a little bit. But luckily, I called him back a month later and we were able to sell services into Bulgari. It was a couple of £100,000 a year contract, and it had positive payment terms. And that is how we were able to begin. So it was literally, that was the first one. We transferred over one member of staff from the old supplier into our team, and Pareto was born. And that was the very beginning.
So this is traditionally a space dominated by some pretty big sort of old boys, kind of old school sort of
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah.
Can you describe how this industry is normally run and
Yeah.
maybe what inspired you to try to position yourself a little bit differently?
Yeah, so a few facts about the sector in the UK. It's £100 billion a year sector, so it's massive. It's one of the biggest like GDP sectors in the UK. We hire 1.2 million people in this sector. And of the 250,000 service providers that do what we did, 93% of those are under £1 million turnover. So what that tells you is there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of smaller businesses doing it, but very few bigger businesses are able to get over the £1 million. So that tells you a little bit about the sector. Now, what that meant is a lot of the bigger client organizations, they tended to only use the big service providers because they were the ones that had the scale to deliver across the whole of the UK and into Europe as it was needed. I'd come out of university and I joined a smaller facilities provider, and I'd worked there for about 4 years. We were then bought out by a bigger provider. So we went from 10 million turnover to 8 billion turnover overnight. And what I found is working in that bigger business, although the organization was fine in itself, it was terrible at delivering services to its customers because it was too big and it wasn't
Right.
possible to deliver that local level of service. So what inspired me to start Pareto was I'd worked for a small business, which was great. We'd worked then for a bigger business for a couple of years because we'd been bought out, and it wasn't great for me. I didn't enjoy it at all, and I thought actually I can see this in the sector. I can see these bigger client organizations are not loving these big facility service providers, and therefore why don't we go and give it a go and maybe go back and take some of those old clients when I was from the small business and actually just start from somewhere to try and get something delivered. So for me, I'd seen it firsthand. Big companies weren't servicing the large clients very well. And I thought we could have a go at that ourselves. And Pareto was born.
Okay. So for for small businesses, which is most of my audience,
Mm,
um, when we think about growing our business, we often think about who can we go call upon and what are we delivering, and there's a certain attitude I think that people will have about what kind of customer they should have,
mm,
right?
mm.
And you were basically a one-man show calling on hotels that charge £15,000 a night. So
Yep.
you really had your sights set high there. The other issue with bigger companies is just the way that they do business. I mean, you alluded to the fact that they're very slow to change and things, but
Yeah.
they use their mass to basically dictate a lot of the terms that they do business under, correct? Like,
Yeah.
I know somebody in the States who is in the facilities management space. And one of the things that is a real big bummer for them is they get paid like 90 to 120 days
Mm,
after they
mm.
deliver services. So they,
Yeah.
while they believe they're in the facilities management business, they're also in the banking business because they're literally financing their
Yeah.
customer, right?
Yeah.
And so can you address that a little bit? Because this,
Yeah.
when you and I had our conversation last week, this was the big takeaway that I wanted to break
Yeah.
apart here for the audience was just understanding like, yeah, you can go make $1 million sale tomorrow, but
Mm.
the terms of that sale can really have an impact on whether or not you can actually deliver and actually make money with that sale.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and again, lots to unpick within there. I think, from my perspective, cash is the most important thing when you start any small business because you can go after profit and go after vanity of high turnover. But if you don't have the cash, you can't pay the staff or the suppliers, and you have no business left. And there is no point sacrificing cash for growth unless you have extra investment because you will just die, and it's completely pointless. What we were able to do early on, and again, because we were targeting high end customers, and because I had some relationships from previously in the 6 years that I'd worked within the sector, those first few I targeted, I was very specific that, look, we are a small business. We're trying to get off the ground here. If we're going to work together, you're going to have to understand that we are fragile from a cash perspective, and we are not going to be able to deal with 90-day or 100-day, 120-day terms. In our sector, you're absolutely right. It is common for 3 to 4 month payment terms, which you're right, it's a bank, but it's a bank that makes no interest because you don't charge any interest on that money. So it's actually a pretty terrible deal. So the first 2 deals I did,
So,
oh,
so
go on,
let
go ahead.
let's break that down for people, okay?
Okay.
Because I want to make sure it's clear for listeners.
Yeah.
So a 90-day payment term arrangement would mean that if I was the service provider, I was doing janitorial, property maintenance, etc.
Yeah.
I would be pay if I would start January 1st, I'd be having my employees do this work. They would want to be paid every 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
I'd be paying out every 2 weeks
Mm.
for 90 days
Yes.
before I collected the payment for the work I did back in January. So
If
in
if you
April,
were
I'd be
lucky. Yeah.
receiving if
Yeah.
I in
That is
April, I
exactly.
would receive a
Yeah.
check for January's work. So
Yes.
what this means is if I'm gonna do that, I actually need to have the money available to pay my employees for almost four
Yeah.
months
Yeah.
in order to make that sale. And this is a trap for a lot of people because they'll chase the sale, they'll agree to do the work, they won't focus enough on the terms of payment, and then they'll scramble after trying to find the cash to support the business.
Yeah. You've understood that exactly right. And look, let's also make another distinction here. Just because a customer says they're going to pay you on 90 days doesn't mean they pay you on 90 days. They may pay
Right.
you after that. And actually, small businesses, a lot of the challenges you have is chasing debt that becomes very important that you receive that debt because of your own cash flow issues that you have. So often, if it was, say, a 60-day term, let's just take 60 days, it would be from the 30th day of the month. So although we delivered services from the 1st to the 31st of January, we couldn't raise the invoice until the 30th day of the month. And then it would be 60 days from that point. So that's how you get to your 90-day terms if they pay you on time. And so that's pretty common for this sector. And it's also a low profit sector as well. So when you mix low profit and poor working capital, like that we just explained there, that's a recipe for disaster for small businesses. They don't have liquidity large enough to be able to deal with that. So I was hyper aware that that's what the big businesses did. And I'd seen it for a couple of years and I knew about the sector as well. So those first couple of deals, I said to customers, look, I appreciate you're taking a chance on us, but I need you to help me from a cash perspective if it's going to work for both parties. Now, you need to have an amazing relationship with a customer where they are willing to go out of their way to improve the payment terms because you're a small business.
And this is where you leveraged your past relationships. And so I want to draw this out too. While you
Yeah,
did start a new business in this sector, you were not
yeah,
new to this sector. You had some roots in the sector, some relationships, some background that
yeah.
you were able to take advantage of in doing this new business.
Yes, but when I mean, that was a 6-year career. I probably managed to leverage 2 relationships out the back of that. It wasn't, but the first one was Bulgari. And if I go
Yeah.
back to the specifics, so with Bulgari, I said, look, we absolutely want to work together, but really, I have no cash. I need to be able to run my business to deliver services to you. I can deliver significantly better than the big boys can because I am more agile. I'm going to be here every day. I'm going to make sure that you are my number one priority, which the big businesses can't say that, but I need you to pay me in advance. And what that meant in real time was we would raise a quarterly invoice, so services from January to 31st of March on the 1st of January, and that would be paid by the 30th of January, generally, that sort of thing. So we'd be raising a 3-month invoice on the first day of the quarter, and it would be paid 30 days in. So effectively, then I've now got 2 months in my pocket from February and March because it's all been paid on the 30th of January. That was the first deal I was able to strike. And look, it's a bit of a miracle I was able to do it, but that is about relationships. That's about 6 years of hard work of building those relationships and being a good person and delivering. But that is how I started. And when I had no cash, that started the cash flow process for us. That was the very beginning.
Andrew, I want to thank you for sharing these details because
Oh yeah,
we hear so often of a business that got established, grew really well, had the private equity exit like you did,
yeah,
and people are very quick to be awed by that story. Go, wow, that's fantastic.
mm,
But I really like to explore the hows, like how
yeah,
did it happen? How are you able to do it? What was the magic sort of thing? And
yeah,
so I can just imagine that you were sitting across from
mhm,
a potential client and you're talking about your superior product and service that you're going to deliver to them, and you're going to say that all of this wonderful stuff comes with payment terms that you're not going to like. So because they're used to paying in arrears by like
yeah,
3 months, right? And
yeah,
so this then hones in on a key aspect of this, which is actually making the sales call and doing a
mhm,
presentation that was successful because you convinced them.
mm.
But it also had to come with a willingness to walk away. Even if people said, yes, I want to hire you, but I can't pay you in advance, you would have to say no initially.
And look, that is a common theme that's gone throughout the business. Even when you get bigger, let's just say you're 10 million turnover, and now you're talking about contracts that are 5 million a year each. It's that sort of level. You still have working capital challenges then. If that's on 90 days, that's probably more dangerous than at the start. So yes, I absolutely had to be willing to walk away because I didn't have the cash. I had no choice. If I'd have said yes and got paid on 90 days, then the business would have gone flop because we just wouldn't have been able to pay the staff or the suppliers. But this is also as part of the sales tactics for smaller businesses, so niche businesses like this. You should be okay in being vulnerable with your customers to say, look, I will give you something you cannot buy from the market. But for you to buy it, you have to change your position. And also, let's face it, the 200 grand a year that they were paying us for the contract was minuscule compared to the profitability and cash flow that they had within the organization. You just had to try and convince them of that in the right way so that they understood why they would be working with you. But look, it is also about being a great salesperson and being a good person, human to human. You're getting into the rounds now of whether the guy on the other side of the table likes you as an individual and is trying to help you as a person. And with the guy, Jeff, who's the chief engineer that got us in there for the first time, he had a couple of kids that were also entrepreneurs, similar age to me. So I start to think that maybe Jeff saw his own children in me in terms of what I was trying to do. And maybe that was just the right time. He never said that. And every other word that Jeff said was a swear word. And he's retired now. He's an amazing guy. But he's the one that gave us the chance. And everyone's looking for their Jeff, right? Everyone wants that person that's going to give them a couple of 100,000 of income in quarterly and advance payment terms. You have to look hard to find them. But I didn't just find him by accident. 6 years I'd been working to sort of build a personal brand and a connection within the sector. I was just able to leverage that relationship at the right time. And there is an element of luck to that as well.
Well, and I think this highlights the comment that all business is done between people, right? And you have to be able to identify who am I going to be talking to, what may be their interest outside of their professional role. Like, I mean, when you talk to someone who is making a purchase in a large enterprise, they have the business's interest at heart, but they also have things going on for themselves in their job and in their personal life that could play a role in the decisions that they make. Speaking of people, Andrew, we got a whole bunch of people in here. We have Kevin, who's joined us from Lakeland, Florida, says hi, good afternoon. Hi, Kevin, good to see you there. We've got Melody, who says that she can hear us. I think that was earlier when my screen froze. We've got Chad, who says he's listening in the background. It looks like he's got $5 million, I think, from his icon there. And then there's Tom from Santa Monica. Hey, Tom, how are you today? And Victor, fellow person from the UK, is calling in from Nottingham. He's watching it and he has given us a like. And I would encourage everyone who's watching, if you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button or leave a comment. It's the way that the algo knows that the content is good and it can drive other people to be shown this material. Um, so so as you grew though, eventually I've got to imagine you would run out of customers who are willing to agree to your terms, who would fall victim to the razzle dazzle that you were delivering.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell us how it changed over time.
Yeah. As it changed over time, look, the biggest piece of advice I can give to small business owners is once you get that first one, so like Bulgari was my first one, and it was a relatively small one in the size of what the business went on to be, you just use that as a sale point thereafter. It's all about trying to make sure that you use that as a catalyst for finding further sales. And I just used the name over and over and over again. And I was lucky. Bulgari was a great name. People knew what it was. It was such a high-end brand. They were a great reference for us as well. As we got bigger, as I mentioned earlier, it did get more challenging. Now, we'd started to build cash reserves, and that was very important to us. And I obsessed about cash. I used to love this idea that we'd have 10 payrolls in the bank account at any time. So if things all went wrong, we'd have 10 months to pay the staff and we could work out what it was going to be. That was just a personal metric that I used. And we got there and we stayed there for almost the entire journey that we were in, which was perfect. But what we found with bigger customers, they were asking for 90 days. Now, there was no chance I was ever going to get quarterly in advance with a £5 million a year contract. It wasn't going to happen. But I was able to get 30-day terms. So really, they would come in at 90 with their procurement teams. And we would say, look, we're going on this journey ourselves. We're growing. We want to work together. The only thing that is not working for us is that you are too small. Your payment terms are just too aggressive for us. If you want to work together, we need you to calm those slightly. And generally, you could get them to come down to 30 days. Now, 30 days is okay. because our payroll was on the 28th of the month. So generally what that would mean is the cash to the teams would go out on the 28th and the money from the client would come in on the 30th. And that would just give you some opportunity then to recoup the cash. And over a period of about 6 years, we accumulated about £4 million of cash in the bank, which just gave us a great level of comfort. And also, then, when you had issues like COVID was a big challenge for the sector because everyone went home. So, who needs facility services when everyone's at home? We had a couple of customers, I won't name them, that just stopped paying us altogether. Now, had all of our customers stopped paying us, we would have been in real trouble. It would have been bad news. But luckily for us, we managed to ride that storm out and come out very successfully out the other side. But yes, that cash focus remained all the way throughout.
So I'm thinking about cash as you're telling us a story, and I'm wondering about the certain characteristics of these different customers that you were approaching. So you had mentioned to me the other day that you did a lot of business with some of these big IT tech firms, some of
Yep,
these online brands and things that
yep,
people would recognize. And when I think of those brands, I think of like venture backed or like companies that sell their equity to raise funds, and so they do a fundraising and they end up with like a lot of money in the bank. So they're like cash rich, right? They can
mm,
afford to agree to the terms that you were proposing. But as you got bigger and you needed to start to approach other clients, I mentioned you had mentioned to me the other day a grocery store chain, for example, that you were
yep,
working with too.
yep,
And I'm thinking groceries, okay, that's a lower margin business
mhm,
and it's a mature business that has likely got an obligation to be issuing maybe a dividend to its shareholders. And
yep,
so I'm thinking their cash management is a whole lot tighter than the tech, titan that
yeah.
raises hundreds of millions of dollars in equity at a time. And so did you look for those kinds of characteristics or think about that when you were about planning your sales pitches or approaching these people?
David, the first thing I said is, where were you 7 years ago when I needed this advice about how to grow a business? You are absolutely spot on here. Look, the reality, because of our tech focus, we had enough of the tech businesses that were making us cash neutral slash cash positive that if
Yeah.
we were, and this is what I mean about managing the cash, we understood our cash flow on a daily basis. That's how much we obsessed about it. So when you met a big grocery chain that was going to give you a couple of £1 million a year contract plus projects on top, and it's an amazing established name in the UK that everybody will know, you could take a risk that they would be paying you on 60 to 90 days. But what you then have to do is the team that deliver that contract for you, as part of their immediate KPIs of success, the KPI of success is always having the purchase orders in advance so you're ready to raise the invoice and the customer will pay. And
Hmm.
secondly, just debt management. Debt management is in like the top three things that you need to manage, because even though you've agreed to this, say, up to 90-day terms, you still need to make sure that you're actually hitting it. And also, those customers, you can be a little bit harder on them because you can say, look, we agreed 90 days. We're an SME. You're turning over however many billions. This isn't ethical that you're not paying us on time. Let's make sure we're getting this relationship right. Now, again, you need to be delivering a really good service to the customer to be able to have that argument with them, because you don't want to create all the negativity. And I'm sort of taking for granted here, we were very, very strong at delivering services. Our retention rate was 90% plus, which is almost
Mm.
unheard of for the sector. It's a very high churn sector that we're in. So when we were delivering a good job, you could have those conversations, but that was dependent on being a great business. But yes, we did sometimes take on terms that were the 60 to 90-day bracket, but then we had to focus even harder on collecting that cash to make sure that it would come in and didn't take us under. And we got that right, but only because of the big tech businesses that were able to help fund us.
You mentioned that you paid your staff on the 28th. Were you paying your employees once a month?
Yes. So UK wise, most employees are on a monthly salary. That's generally how it
Oh,
works here.
okay. It's interesting because in North America, I think
Yeah.
most people are getting a paycheck every second week.
Mm,
And as an employee, what that means is that, for people that have a hard time with budgeting, it means twice every year they end up with a month with 3 paychecks,
yeah.
which of course makes employees quite happy. But on the flip side, employers have 2 months out of the year where they have to run payroll 3 times. And so it adds to this lopsided sloppiness with the cash flow.
Mm,
and
Mm,
it's something that I bring up from time to time with employees, with clients that have really tight cash flow. Is I'll ask them about, their payroll methodology, because some organizations pay twice a month,
mm,
and because they're trying to, give people the same sort of, I don't know, budgetability as a, you
yeah,
know like paying them every 2 weeks, but they don't want to have those 3 pay months. Eventually, you grew to 500 staff.
yeah.
Um, what 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 was the hardest part about that when you started to? Because I would imagine at 500 people now, you've got people on your payroll that you've never met.
Yes, and that is the hardest thing. As an entrepreneur, the first couple of hundred people, I hired everybody. I knew everyone. I knew their family stories. I knew their fragilities, their good parts, their bad parts. And that's partly what made the business strong, because I had such good connections with everybody. And I'm a nice guy. I'm always trying to help everybody that I can. And I feel there's a responsibility to do that. As you get bigger, you walk into rooms and you don't know sometimes the people that are in there, sometimes the majority of people that are in there. And you become a bit of like this superstar that people have just heard of and they've never really met, and like you're this charismatic leader. I always found that a bit embarrassing. I was always quite a normal, down to earth person that just wanted to eat donuts and have a coffee with each other. So that worked particularly well for me. As you get bigger, you have to have a great senior management team in place. I handpicked our 15 senior managers that ran this business for us. They were only hired by me because I had to make sure they understood the vision. I understood what they were sacrificing to come and work for our organization. We gave them something called sweet equity, which is shares in the business, that if you're there when the business sells, the shares get some value. So we're able to create value for the senior management team as well. But what that meant was
You called
I
that
had to wrote
sweet equity?
sweet equity. Yes, sweet equity,
Okay,
because it
so is
is
it kind
gifted.
of like a shadow equity or phantom share sort
Uh,
of arrangement?
Well, yeah, and maybe some call it a hope share. Effectively, you are gifted it as part of your employment. So there's no tax or anything to pay when you receive it. It only gets value when the business is sold one day. So if the business never sells, you never get value. And also, if you leave the business, you give it back. So you only own it and you only get value of it if you are in the organization. And
So
the
if you
idea is
if
you
you
encourage people to
happen
stay.
to be there when it's sold, then in the moment of the transaction, you get a capital gain from 0 to whatever the share price was.
Correct. Exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah. And that
Right.
worked very successfully for us through the exits that we did. And there was an 8-figure sum that was split across the team members that we had, which was really successful. But really, what I wanted them to do was I wanted to make sure that they were the ones that would drive the culture without me in the room. Because across those 15 people, they did see everybody every day. They did know everybody. But that's, again, one of my biggest pieces of advice to small business owners. As you start to scale that team, handpick those people who are better than you in lots of different areas, because you're never going to be the best at everything, and make sure you trust them. Do not hire anybody that you don't think you can trust, because it's such a waste of time. And ultimately, you just won't trust them from the start anyway. I was lucky. The 15 people I hired, I got it right. We had 100% retention in the 10 years that I was there with the senior management team. No one ever left. But I gave a disproportionately high amount of my time to making sure I hired the right people. I obsessed about it. And luckily for me, we got it right.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that, as people grow a business from one person,
Mm,
then maybe they get a helper of some kind, and they teach that helper how to do their regular jobs. Then they get this big leverage, this with the helper helping with something. But when you start to actually have to hire people to do the things that you do every day, it's easy to think, well, I'm immediately going to get the same kind of leverage I did when I hired my first helper, but it's not in fact true, because then you have to invest all kinds of time in the ongoing development and support of those new people. And I mean, I noticed this even with myself. You start to add more and more hours to the week, uh,
mm,
doing development with employees,
yeah.
and it really can become a long term before that payoff is ever realized.
And yeah, look, the other thing, I am a typical entrepreneur that thought I could do everything and thought I was better than everyone at everything. And that's just an early part of running a business. The minute I managed to hire better people than me in, say, finance or in sales or ops or whatever, that was when I was able to properly step back and start working on the business. You know, they say about working in the business or on the business. And
Yep.
until I made those hires, I wasn't able to do it. And that's partly why I was working 100 hours a week for the first few years, because I was probably doing 6 people's jobs at the same time. And there's a great book called The 4 Hour Work Week, which literally teaches us, if you can find someone to do something cheaper than it will cost you to do it per hour, get them to do that task, because it's a really straightforward transactional thing. The one thing I never did was hire a PA or an EA myself. I never had an assistant, even when the business was a 50 million turnover, because I still liked keeping that control of my diary and of the administration and everything I had. And I was obsessing about making sure we always delighted the customers, and we never missed an appointment, and we never missed a meeting and everything. And I was just too highly strung to let someone else maybe make a mistake where I didn't walk into the right room at the right time. And that
Mm.
remained important to me right until this day. I still don't have an EA now, but I have a lot less work to do. So there are certain areas of my work life that I wanted to keep hold of, but there were other areas such as finance that I was very happy to let go of with the right team. And they made it absolutely sing compared to what I was doing before. And it was absolutely the right decision.
Now, part of growing Pareto was you did some acquisitions along the way. Can you talk to us a little bit about the types and sizes of businesses that you ended up acquiring through your growth arc?
Yep. Yep. So we've acquired a couple of businesses now. So one was a £2 million cleaning business. So what we found was we were starting to look at merger and acquisition opportunities within our own supply chain. For anyone who's starting an M&A process, look at your suppliers. Who are you spending loads of money with on an annual basis that maybe you could buy them? We had a cleaning business that was doing 2 million turnover, of which 1 million of that was with Pareto. So it absolutely made sense to us to have a chat to them to say, hey, look, we'd love to insource the services, bring everything into ours. The entrepreneur, she was at the right time. She was ready to go, and we worked out a plan, and we did that deal over about a year. It worked really well in the end. So we had one of those. And then more recently, we acquired an engineering business called Soga. So they are a much bigger organization, so 20 odd million pounds turnover, and they're an engineering business. And the reason for that is Pareto is wanting to strengthen its engineering capabilities with self-delivery. So instead of using specialist suppliers for various engineering tasks, we wanted to buy a company that was able to deliver it directly. So we bought a brilliant business called Soga. It's performing very well for us, and is growing very well since the deal has been done as well. And it
And
means genuinely we
you're still in leadership at Pareto. I don't know if we said that clearly earlier. You did an exit, but you're still in the leadership there.
I am on the board, yeah. So I'm a non-executive on the board. So my job now
Okay.
is a strategic role to make sure that the business continues to go in the right direction. I'm also a minority shareholder still in Pareto from how the deal was structured. So I still have some
Okay.
interest in the organization. I have no day-to-day operational responsibility. It's simply a brief from outside to make sure we're strategically supporting.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
so yes, but that asset Soga has done really well, and we're able to now offer more services to our customers that already exist. Because one of the other things of M&A is, if you can buy an organization that has additional services that it can provide that you couldn't, and your customers have a need for that, well, you now have 50 customers that you can sell that service to in a closed environment that you're already in. So that's a very, very successful opportunity for people. And yeah, that's working well for us now.
So speaking of that, I mean, the people who watch this channel are people who are interested in small business M&A, doing an
Yeah.
acquisition, or maybe they're preparing to sell one day.
Mhm.
What kinds of tells might exist when I'm looking at a small business that might let me know if this is going to be a good business if I want to then go and do some enterprise level work with someone else? Like, are there any things somebody should be looking for?
Yeah, I in the smaller businesses. So let's just say businesses up to 5 million pounds or dollars turnover a year. You just want to make sure how connected that entrepreneur really is to the running of the day to day. I think, as you said at the top, if you're not careful, businesses are just very high paychecks for individuals who are actually running everything. And I think entrepreneurs are salespeople. They will say whatever it takes to sell a business. You should definitely spend some time and some due diligence money making sure you understand the operational due diligence of the business. We tend to focus on finances, IT, commercials. That's where we focus our attention from a due diligence perspective. But what we don't often do is understand what is the operational day to day that founder or that entrepreneur is dealing with. So I think don't forget that. Just and that is probably a couple of dinners, going to have a chat with the team, having a couple of coffees. Just put yourself amongst it and ask those questions. And you ask enough questions, and you'll catch them out on things that they're trying to hide from you. But if you find that they're still integrated into it, that's okay. You just have to build a better earnout structure for them post deal and see what you can negotiate. But yeah,
And keep them
entrepreneurs aren't always
involved.
perfect. And keep them involved, which is
Yeah.
sometimes a great thing, sometimes not. Depends on the entrepreneur. It's all about personalities, I think, for that and what sort of deal you can strike. There's 1,000 stories which everyone will tell you, but I am aware of a guy who a business wasn't us. A business was purchased. He said he would stay on afterwards, and he turned up on the first day in the boardroom with his pipe and slippers and said, "I'm not doing another day's work for you. I've got my money now. That's it." That's the story we were told. And I was like, yeah, probably some people are like that, but your due diligence should have been better in the lead up to buying that business. But
Andrew, if you just, and I know you're kind of retired now. I mean, you've got some money from this transaction that you did. If you were going to go and start over tomorrow and you wanted to get into business again, what would be your plan?
I would probably go and do something I enjoy a bit more, and probably something that has less people in it. So there's two things. Look, facilities management is great because it's a massive market, and I was able to carve out a niche that really worked for us. And working with big tech companies like your Twitters and Netflixes and Facebooks and stuff, that's fun, right? You can go and have great fun doing some of that. But if I was starting again, I'd probably do something that didn't feel like work on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, I love jet skis in England when it's cold and we're trying to jet ski around in the summertime down on the south coast. I would probably buy a couple of jet skis, moor them up, and then charge people £200 an hour or whatever to ride around on the jet skis with me, because I know some of those businesses are starting to dry up because the insurance is really expensive now. But I think I could enjoy that. And also, people are wonderful when they are doing well and they're working well for you. When you get like above the 500 level, it becomes a challenge because unfortunately, you have to start treating people as a process rather than as an individual. And you lose some of that sort of direct one-to-one, just sort of like love, I guess, to some degree that you have between the whole thing, because it has to be a process because there's so many people now. So yes, I have no ambitions to start any other businesses at this stage. You won't be surprised. I get pitched an awful lot of opportunities for investment now, but I haven't quite found the one just yet. But yes, if you hear that I'm down in Cornwall in the UK on a jet ski, then maybe I've started that business, and that's what I'm doing now.
Do you think that people management, personal service angle is the reason why facilities management is such a fragmented industry as far as ownership?
Yeah, I think that it can be. And also, it's very straightforward to start a business out the back of your car and say you're a cleaning business or an engineering or an air conditioning. There are very,
Yeah.
very few barriers to entry in the UK for that, especially on like the soft services side. Say you're a reception business, for example, there's almost no barrier to entry. You're a reception business, fantastic. You just start tomorrow. So that is very, very easy to start an organization, and they do. And that's partly why we have a highly fragmented market, because anybody can do it. It's not like a legal practice or a medical practice. It's nothing like that. And
And
also,
you didn't have much in the way of capital investment. I'm sure you might have had some vehicles and things, but there really wasn't much in the way of equipment or gear, was there?
no, no, not with us. There were some vehicles, but maybe about 10. It wasn't. And then there were actually the vehicles were on specific contracts. London Zoo and Whipsnade Zoo were two big contracts for us. And there was about 8 vehicles, for example, across those electric vehicles. So, yes, there wasn't a massive capital. And when we sold the business, really you're selling the contracts. So like the other focus is on having signed contractual agreements that are 5 to 7 years long, because then investors can be confident that they're going to retain those contracts over a longer period of time, as well as looking at your past performance, as well as they spoke to a number of our customers prior to exit as well to make sure that it was going to be positive on the other side. And that's part of the due diligence process.
How did you manage that? Because a lot of the times when people want to sell a business, they're fearful of the buyers talking with customers. They don't want to spill the beans that a transaction might be in underway. So how did you go about managing it that, and how did you feel about it when they obviously were asking to do that kind of interaction with your clientele?
The first time they told me about it, I was like, absolutely no way are you speaking to any of my customers until the deal was done. I was actually quite hyped up about it. I wasn't going to be
Yeah.
willing to let it happen because, as you just said, David, you're nervous. You're nervous about selling the business for a few reasons because you've built a successful organization. You are going to make millions of pounds as a result of this deal happening. So you personally have a lot on the line and you don't want to upset your clients because you've never upset them before. So why would you go and do it now? So I had to get over that pretty quickly because the answer was, well, if you want to sell it, you're going to have to let us talk to the customers. What we ended up doing was we had high quality in person conversations with our most important customers where we went to them and we said, hey, look, we are looking to raise investment so that we can grow the business from where we are today into a much bigger organization. The one positive we had for our customer base was that we were not selling to a big organization that was going to swallow us up and we would lose our personality overnight. So within our sector, the bigger organizations buy the smaller ones on a regular basis. That's very common to happen. So our customer base was actually really happy that we were having investment from private equity so that we could continue on our growth curve. We would remain independent and we wouldn't be sold to one of the big companies. So actually that was a real positive because they could see our growth, they could see our success, and some of them were nervous about what was going to happen next. So in some degree, it was a relief to them that this is the route that we were going down. But that's only because we managed that process so closely to make sure they understood what we were doing.
Well, and I think it has to do with the way you framed it, right? Because while you, Andrew, were selling your stock to this private equity group, really Pareto was going to remain a standalone facilities management company, and you framed it with respect to this is going to be a financial backer that can now fuel further growth. And I like that how you frame it as an investment rather than a business sale.
But also it was true. I mean, Pareto's gone
Yeah.
from say 50 million turnover to 80 million turnover since I had my exit back to the board, and that's because of the financial investment and the positive relationship we'd had with them post the deal. So, like, yes, that is true, and there are many examples of smaller businesses that have been bought out by big ones in our sector. That within 6 to 12 months, most of the senior management team is gone, the logo is gone, and the business almost doesn't exist any longer. And that
Yeah.
was that's tried and tested in our sector. So we were very pleased not to go down that route. So yeah, we opened up we allowed the investors to speak to our clients before the deal, completely open process. And our net promoter scores, so that the way that they were managing us, were very high. We had fantastic NPS scores with our customers, and that was on qualitative conversational data. There was nothing like just fill out this survey. This was actually talking to people about where we were going. It also gave the customers reassurance that the investors we had were good people. They were also talking about going on the journey together and making sure that that story was right. And it just worked. And we didn't have any issues whatsoever through, say, the 20 or so customers that they ended up talking to. But it was a well managed, personal, highly communicative process to make sure that there was no opportunity for people to get the wrong end of the stick, as you'd say, and make sure everybody
Yeah.
understood why we were here and what was happening.
And how does Pareto rank with respect to the industry currently in the UK? Are there many other players that would be larger as far as headcount?
So you have the massive behemoth businesses who are into the billions. So there are a number of those. Pareto's probably top 3%, I would say, in turnover terms of the sector now. So, and headcount wise, 500 headcount is quite a reasonable size business in the organization. What we did have is we worked very hard on our brand positioning. So I go right back to the top where I said that I was out there networking and building relationships when I was in my earlier career. So I was ready for Pareto in the future. That worked really well. And there was an external survey in 2022, which put Pareto as the sixth most recognized brand in the sector. Now we're going up against businesses 300 times our size who we had a better recognition score with within the sector than they did, predominantly because we worked really hard on our social media presence on LinkedIn in particular to make sure that anytime we had a story to tell, we told the story. And it was free to do that. And it was really easy. So, yeah, we'd probably say top 3% ish. We're nowhere near the absolutely enormous businesses. They are still like into tens of billions, some of them now. And there are some huge deals going on right now to make those big ones even bigger. But all I see is an opportunity for this mid-market, agile, disruptive organization in Pareto now that is still able to support these businesses and be agile, but now we have scale behind us and direct delivery behind us that can actually improve that too. So I see it as a fantastic opportunity for Pareto. And as an investor, I'm really keen that that grows, because of course I would be. And so, yeah, I say that with yeah, with an investment in the business, but absolutely it's the right opportunity and the right time.
Well, Andrew, I want to thank you for coming over today. I think this has been a really interesting conversation. And when you and I first met, and I heard how you actually were able to make the sale to get people to pay you up front, I knew it was a story I wanted to share with people, because I wanted to show people that yes, you can turn an industry standard business model on its head. You just have to have the conviction and make sure that you can do a proper presentation and convince people that you're the one to pull it off, and why it is of value to them to actually want to do the deal the way that you want to do it. And so I think this has been very valuable for a lot of people out there.
Yeah. And actually, I rarely get to talk about the detail these days on podcasts. So I'm really happy to have done that and explain these things. I think you're right. Just another, if I just may finish on, it's very easy as small business owners to look online and look at all these amazing businesses and look how they grew. You get 1% of the real story about what it
Yeah.
actually took to get there. And it's all a social media thing, if it's even real at all. And that's why I really like that the facts I'm able to give, they're real facts. These are things that are demonstrable that we've done. So yeah, don't always believe everything that you see online, because it isn't real. And actually, it is a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, and pressure, and lack of sleep, and all that stuff. But you just have to keep creating the opportunity for luck to happen. That's what I believe in, and you just have to be out there and do everything you can and be consistent.
Awesome. We've got, Mark just has chimed in here from Arizona. He says, hello, how are you? Howdy from Arizona. And we also have someone else who says, thank you, Andrew, for coming by today. And I would parrot that as well. Thank you very much. Andrew, if people want to connect with you online and communicate with you some more, what's the best way for them to do that?
Two ways. So Instagram is _Andrew Hulbert, and then my LinkedIn is just /Andrew Hulbert. So yeah, you'll find me on both of those.
That's awesome. I'm going to put a link to the LinkedIn down below. And I'll try to figure out how to log into my Instagram, and maybe I'll follow you on there too.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. And everyone in the audience, thank you so much. And whether you're live or you're listening to the replay later, please hit the thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Again, it's the only way that the algo knows that the content is good is if people interact with it. And, thank you. Thanks for saying thank you. I'm glad that so many people did decide to stop by here live, and we'll see you next time. Cheers. So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally, and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.